Welcome to the online approver training for HIPRO, the state's e-procurement application. SPO 305 is a training for government personnel who will be approving solicitations and addenda or award notices and amendments in HIPRO. At the end of this training, you will have an opportunity to complete your certificate of completion. Be sure to do so and save a copy for your records. What will be covered? First, we'll cover resources, some definitions, and a little about the HIPRO application in general. Then we'll cover the approver role and responsibilities. To put it all in perspective, we'll briefly review the other roles in HIPRO so you have a good idea of how everything and everyone fits in the system. It will make it easier to work together and more efficiently when you know what everyone is supposed to do. We'll briefly look at commodity codes so it will be easier for you to determine if the buyer has selected the correct codes. We'll cover the two-step process to get access to HIPRO, and finally, we'll walk through the process of approving or disapproving a solicitation or award. Note that if you are an approver for a solicitation, you will also be an approver for any addenda for that solicitation. Likewise, if you are an approver for a notice of award, you will also be an approver for any amendments to the notice of award or contract amendment. There are three main documents: the HIPRO Program Manual, which provides information such as all the roles and responsibilities and some important definitions. Read it first before you do anything in HIPRO. The HIPRO Approver Quick Reference has the step-by-step directions with screenshots of procedures for approving or disapproving a solicitation in HIPRO. Keep it handy when you review a solicitation. The training reference contains the PowerPoint slides used in this training. You can find them on the SPO site. This training is designed specifically for personnel who will have the approver role in HIPRO. With the exception of e-administrators, SPO does not require that other roles take this training, and it's not designed for them. However, some departments may require certain staff take this training. Notice that this training doesn't teach you about the method of procurement. HIPRO is not a method of procurement. It's a tool to help departments conduct a solicitation in a more transparent and efficient way. Just a couple of definitions so we all know we're all talking about the same thing on HIPRO. There are more definitions in the HIPRO Program Manual. In different places you may see Department E-Administrator, Department Administrator, CPO Jurisdiction Administrator. They all refer to the same role, that is, the Department or CPO Jurisdiction E-Procurement Administrator or their alternates. The listing of the administrators is on the SPO website. For the purposes of HIPRO, RFQ is the small purchase method of procurement pursuant to HRS 103D-305. IFB, also known as the invitation for bid, is the competitive sealed bidding method of procurement pursuant to HRS 103D-302. There are additional definitions in the HIPRO Program Manual. A little bit about HIPRO. We pronounce it HIPRO, no E. The E is silent. Solicitation notices and awards in HIPRO are posted to a public site automatically, with one exception of small purchase request for quotes in which the buyer has chosen to select the option of limiting it to Hawaii-only vendors. More about this later. HIPRO has pre-bid or pre-offer conference notice, a question and answer section, and addenda are also issued on HIPRO. Offers must be submitted in HIPRO. You cannot accept them if the vendors mail them or email them. HIPRO is actually two sites, one where you will be approving solicitations and awards. That's known as the production site. And there's one where buyers can practice entering solicitations. That's known as the training site. They're two entirely different sites, and there is a separate registration for each. We'll be looking at the training site later. Here's what you need to do if you would like access to the training site. About approver responsibilities. As an approver in HiPro, you have 4 basic responsibilities. Maintain the security of HiPro, ensure procurement is conducted pursuant to the statutes, admin rules, and procurement procedures for the particular method of procurement. Ensure the buyer has included clear written specifications, minimum qualifications, if applicable, and any administrative requirements. And then lastly, adhere to the procurement code of ethics. About maintaining security. HiPro accounts may not be shared. Your name is on the account, and its use is your responsibility. Do not lend your account. Maintain security of your account. Your login is your email, which means your password is even more important. You must protect it. Don't do things like post your password on your computer monitor. Note that you will be prompted to change your password every 3 months. Data in HiPro must also be kept secure. Log out of HiPro when you step away from your computer. Procurement data is also subject to requirements for open information. FOIA. Make sure you know when information must be kept confidential and when it must be released. It helps also to know what is on the public site. The statutes, admin rules, and procurement circulars are there for your protection. And you have to do more than just attend training. Procurement rules change. You're not required to take training over and over, though you can. You are responsible for staying up to date. You can do that by checking the website each time you approve. Go to the procurement circulars, sort them by date with the most recent first, especially the first few weeks after legislature adjourns. Check the manuals and training handouts for updates. Check the web pages on the method of procurement being utilized. Remember also, what is being purchased may also be subject to statutes or administrative rules that are not part of the procurement statutes or administrative rules. An example is the apprenticeship program and construction. Ethical procurement. Conducting an ethical procurement is critical. It reflects not only on you, but everyone who purchases for the state. There needs to be no conflict of interest or even appearance of conflict of interest. When you have access to HiPro as an approver, you have access to information about every vendor in HiPro. You must be an employee of the state through the personnel process. You cannot be hired through the contracting process because that makes you a vendor. It would not be fair for one vendor to have access to all the other vendors' information. HiPro buyers may not be a vendor to the state, even if it's for something entirely different than what you do or for another department. Approvers in HiPro. There is no separate approver title or function in HiPro. Approvers are buyers who are placed in an approval path. Many approvers are more experienced procurement personnel who not only procure but also oversee others who are less experienced in procurement. As an approver, you will have the same access to HiPro as a buyer. Just remember, if you only have delegation as an approver, you should not conduct solicitations on HiPro. Other HiPro roles and responsibilities. The e-administrator has the primary responsibility to oversee HiPro for the department or the CPO jurisdiction. They ensure security, control who has access, make sure it's used properly, and are the point of contact for department buyers and approvers. The system administrator oversees HiPro for the state and serves as the point of contact with the departments and CPO jurisdictions and also with the vendor administering HiPro, Hawaii Information Consortium, LLC, or HIC. The buyer, of course, conducts the solicitation in accordance with statutes, admin rules, procurement circulars, and other policies and procedures using good procurement practices. Requester. This is a new optional role to help centralize procurement functions. Not many departments are using this role yet. Non-procurement personnel, who are the experts in the goods or services to be purchased, enter the specifications and other requirements. A buyer picks up the request, finalizes it, and issues the solicitation. About NIGP commodity codes. We use commodity codes to connect the vendors with appropriate solicitations. We use the NIGP commodity codes, which are proprietary. Codes are also used to conduct analyses of where our expenditures are. We use the 5-digit version. The first 3 digits are the class. There are over 300 classes. The second 2 digits are the goods, services, or construction, and there are over 7,000 of those. You probably don't want to print out all the codes. Numbering is somewhat alphabetical. Classes up to 899 are for goods, that is, stuff. Classes beginning with 900 are for services, including construction. As an illustration, here are some of the most commonly used commodity codes. Class 071, automobiles, school buses, SUVs, and vans. 07180 are SUVs, whereas 07190 are cargo vans. Class 910, building maintenance, installation, and repair services, includes 91039, janitorial and custodial services. Another common commodity code class is 988, roadside, grounds, recreational, and park area services. 98802 is arborist services. 98888 is tree trimming and pruning services. Note that commodity codes are not methods of procurement, nor are they specification. We use the commodity codes primarily to link the right vendors with the right procurements. There are some commodity codes that are labeled professional services. Just remember that this is an NIGP description and is not the same as the professional services method of procurement. At this time, professional services method of procurement is not conducted on Hypro. Obtaining a Hypro account. Obtaining a Hypro account is a 2-step process. The first step is you must have an eHawaii.gov account. Some of you may already have one. The second step is your e-administrator grants you access once they obtain certain information. SPO has some forms that departments may use for requesting accounts, but we have several forms, so it may be done a number of different ways. Departments tend to take the forms and tweak them, so save yourself some time and effort by checking on your department procedure before you do anything. Here's the how-to for creating an eHawaii.gov account. The procedure is also on the Approver Quick Reference and on the Hypro site. This is a description of the information you will need to submit to your e-administrator. You must check with your e-administrator for forms and procedures. Approvals are not mandatory in Hypro. It's the decision of each department. Approvals are a good check and balance for Hypro. SPO uses them for that purpose. Do not set yourself up as your own approver. It just doesn't make sense. Approval paths must be created and assigned in advance in Hypro and can be for solicitations and addenda or awards and award or contract amendments. Approval paths can have several approvers. They're always consecutive. If the first approver in the path doesn't approve, there's no way for the second approver to approve. Subsequent approvers do not have access until the preceding approver approves. Your e-administrator needs to create the approval path, and most of the time they're not psychic. They don't know unless someone tells them. If you should be an approver in an approval path in Hypro, be sure to check with your e-administrator for your departmental process. If on your SPO Form 36 your delegation is only as an approver, That means you do not have delegated authority to actually conduct a procurement on Hypro, even though you may have access. So don't procure. Approval paths have to be assigned to a function, either solicitation or award. They also have to be assigned to a method of procurement. All addenda will flow through the same path as a solicitation. All award or contract amendments will flow through the same path as an award. An approval path can be assigned an amount range instead of applying to all solicitations or all awards. As an example, a department may set up an approval path for solicitations estimated at $100,000 or less to go through one approval path, and solicitations of more than $100,000 to $2 million to go through another approval path. Note that the amount range is only for determining whether it will go through a particular approval path. It does not limit a buyer from issuing a solicitation for an amount over a path range. Lastly, approvals are fine and wonderful, but if they're not assigned to a buyer, nothing goes on the approval path. You may have a backup approver if you go on vacation or on a trip. Your e-administrator has to assign your backup, and it's done by each approval path. So be sure to give your e-administrator all the approval paths that you're on. For instance, Stan could be your backup for your solicitation approval path, and Sean could be your backup for your awards approval path. This is how to utilize the backup approvers if you have them. When you are going to be out of the office, you select the I am out of office button from your dashboard. We'll show you that later. All approvals that come to you will then be routed to your backup for approval. When you return, you'll log in and you'll select the I have returned to office button. Future approvals will now be routed back to you. The mechanics of approving or disapproving is very simple. 4 steps. Log in. All items awaiting your approval will be on the dashboard. Select the solicitation or award awaiting your approval. Review it by selecting each tab. At the bottom of each of the pages are Approve and Reject buttons. Select one. Note that if you reject a solicitation or award, you will need to enter a reason so the buyer knows what to do. It's fairly simple and straightforward. The devil is in the detail. Some common issues or items to review. Make sure the solicitation and the line item titles make sense and are descriptive of what's being purchased. The solicitation title is what vendors search on and what they see when they receive the notice. The descriptions can include the specifications if they're short enough. If specifications are in an attachment, the description field should have a short description and reference the attachment. In summary, Hypro is not artificial intelligence. It's just a computer program. Just because you can do something in Hypro doesn't mean it's okay or necessarily a good thing to do. Hypro also doesn't know what to buy. The buyer has to provide all the specifications. If what is needed is not specifically described, it's hard to tell what you'll get. Even though you may be approving because you are someone's supervisor, or you're told you're approving just to make sure the funds are there, Hypro records your approval as an approval of the entire solicitation or award. While it doesn't show to the public, it is kept in Hypro and subject to the Open Information Act. Questions? Look at the training resources and FAQs on the SPO website. If you still have questions, contact your e-administrator. Next, we'll look at the Hypro landing page, the home dashboard after you log in. Then we'll walk through approving or disapproving a solicitation, an addendum, and an award. So this is Hypro. We're on the production site. where you'll be conducting your review and issuing your approvals or disapprovals. At the top of the page is an area with a black background. Towards the right, you'll see Help Chat. Selecting this link connects to a chat with Hawaii Information Consortium, or HIC, the vendor providing the HiPro application. This link is primarily for vendors. It's manned by HIC staff. They know about the application. They don't know about procurement. You can use it as an approver if you're having problems logging in, or if there's a problem with the application itself. For instance, if a window doesn't open. Do not use Help Chat for questions about commodity codes, the unit of measure, or any procurement-related questions. Contact your e-administrator if the answer is not in the training references. Further down, you'll see a green or teal-colored header. On the left is Home. That is this page, the HiPro landing page. Next to that is Commodity Codes. This is where you can view commodity codes by class. When you select it, a list of over 300 classes appears. Note that they're alphabetical, and all goods or stuff until you get to class 898. X-ray and other radiological equipment. Classes 900 and above are services, including construction. Each class is a link. Select the link, and all the commodity codes within that class appear. Moving to the right on the header, the next link is Public Search. Select this and you'll be able to search solicitations that are open to all vendors on HiPro. Notice that I didn't say all solicitations on HiPro. This application allows buyers to limit small purchase method of procurement solicitations to Hawaii-only vendors. If the buyer chooses this option, vendors registered in HiPro who have not entered a Hawaii address cannot even see the solicitation. Small purchase solicitations for which the buyer has chosen the Hawaii vendor-only option will not appear on the public site. It would cause a great deal of confusion. Non-Hawaii vendors would see the Hawaii-only solicitation on the public site, then log in and not be able to find them. This Hawaii vendors only option is available for small purchase requests for quotes only. It is not available for competitive sealed bids, IFBs, or competitive sealed proposals, RFPs. If you want the solicitation to be on the public site, don't allow the buyer to select the option to limit it to Hawaii-only vendors. If you want to view all solicitations, select the Search button without selecting any of the parameters. To view the details of a solicitation, select the solicitation number. Information on the solicitation is on 3 tabs on the Public Search. The General Information tab is the default view. On this tab, you'll see the department issuing the solicitation, offer due date, and any attachments that apply to all line items. The next tab is the Line Items tab. It contains details about the line items. After selecting the Line Item tab, you'll see a listing of all the line items. To see the details of each line item, select the line item number. The third and final tab on the public site is the instructions for the solicitation. Notice there is no place for a vendor to respond to the solicitation on the public site. Vendors must log in to respond. On the public search, there are two tabs. The second tab is for searching awards. You can search all awards in HiPro. Like solicitations, you select the search button to view all. To view a contract award, select the award title. Note that the solicitation number is a link to the solicitation. One last thing before we leave the awards. Wherever you see a listing of items in HiPro, you'll see two buttons. The button with the diagonal arrows allows you to control the number of records, in this case awards, that appear on the screen. By selecting the button and the drop-down arrow, you can view more than 10 up to all records on a single window. The other button that looks like bullets allows you to control which columns appear. The very last item in the header menu is the vendor registration button. This is where you direct vendors to register if they're not already in HiPro. You can get back to the home page by selecting Home. Moving further down, just above the Login button, see Learn More About HiPro. Selecting this link and scrolling about halfway down the page will take you to HiPro for state and county agencies. There you'll find training references, forms, and information. The Login button is where everyone who has access to HiPro may log in. Next to the Login button, you'll see the Sign Up link. You select Sign Up to create an eHawaii.gov account, the first step in gaining access to HiPro. For your information, it's also a two-step process for vendors to gain access to HiPro. The first step is the same as for approvers. Vendors must have an eHawaii.gov account. The second step is different. Buyers and approvers must get access from their e-administrator. Vendors have to select this vendor registration link, and on the next page, select the Login and Register as a Vendor button. Once you've completed the two-step process, when you log in with your eHawaii.gov account, the Home link up here becomes Home Dashboard. On the right, where you see Vendor Registration, you will see your login, which is your email address. If for some reason you log in and see your email address on the right, but the Home Dashboard doesn't appear on the left, it means you have not been given access to HiPro yet. Creating an eHawaii.gov account, that first step in the two-step process, is fairly simple and straightforward. Select Sign Up. Open each section if it's not already open, and follow the instructions and complete the information. When you create your password, select the little question mark above the field. It will tell you what you need as a minimum for a password. Remember the secret question and the answer. Should you forget your password, you'll need the answer to your secret question in order to reset your password. Fill out the rest of the information. Skip the link to subscriber account. It's for vendors. The bottom of the page, select I agree to the terms of use and select Create Account. Step 1 for gaining access to HiPro is easy. Next, we'll log in and review the dashboard. We'll do it on the training site so you can see what it looks like when an approver has some pending approvals. Before we leave the production site, look at the background. Notice the pretty picture. This is the training site. It looks a lot like the production site with a few differences. Remember the pretty picture that was in the background? The training site has no pretty picture. Should you want access to the training site, it's an entirely separate site, and it requires that you set up a separate account. More information on how to do this is in the Approver Training handout. Now we'll log in and look at the dashboard. So this is the dashboard. Notice that the overall look is the same as the public site, but there are differences. In the header menu, it says Home Dashboard instead of just Home. The link to commodity codes is still there. Where it used to say Public Search, now it just says Search. That's another clue you're logged in. If you select Search and look at the tabs, you'll see that there is one additional tab that was not on the public site. That's the Vendor tab. By selecting the Vendor tab, you may search for vendors by name or by commodity code. Enter a 1 or 2 word description in the commodity code. Select the appropriate commodity code and then select Search. Are these the vendors you would expect to see? You can also search for vendors by name. When you find your vendor from the list, select it. Then select the Commodity Code tab. You'll see all the commodity codes that particular vendor registered for. Back at the header, all the way to the right, where it used to say Vendor Registration on the public site, it now has your login, that is, your email address. Selecting the drop-down next to your login, you'll see 2 items. Log Out, that's pretty self-explanatory, and Update your eHawaii.gov account. If you need to change your address, phone, name, email, password, or secret questions, this is where you do it. Only you have access to this information in your eHawaii.gov account. Now let's move down the dashboard. If you have anything requiring your approval, it will be here in this next section. You'll be able to just click and begin your review. Before we do that, let's finish reviewing the dashboard. Below these, you will see several tiles under What Would You Like to Do? On the left is the View My Profile and Approval Paths. Selecting it will show your name, email, phone, and department. At the bottom, you'll see all the approval paths to which you're assigned as an approver. Going back to the dashboard, at the very bottom of the dashboard is an I am out of office button. Selecting it will reroute all solicitations, addenda, awards, or amendments entering the approval path to your backup or backups for each approval path that you're in. This will only happen if your e-administrator has set up your backup or backups. Make sure you have a backup approver before selecting the I am out of office button. If you do not have a backup approver, your approvals will not go to anyone. Finally, we'll now cover how to approve or disapprove. First, we'll go over the mechanics, then we'll look at it more closely. All items that are awaiting your approval are at the top of the page. Select the link to begin your review. First, we'll approve a solicitation awaiting release. Don't blink, because the mechanics of approving are simple. Remember, the devil is in the details. We'll look more closely at what you should be reviewing after the mechanics are demonstrated. There are several tabs in which the information has been entered, and it's formatted in a manner very similar to the public site. Much of the information that you'll be reviewing is on the first tab, the General Information. You can review information on the General Information tab and then move to the next tab. You can also move back and forth between tabs should you need to compare information to make sure it's consistent. There are now a lot of tabs, but you don't need to review them all. A number of them will have no data to review at this point. At the bottom of each page are Approve and Reject buttons. The duplicate button is not for approvals. Just ignore it for now. The buttons are for the entire solicitation, not just the page. Once you've completed your review, select the appropriate button from the bottom of any page. To approve, simply select Approve. If you need to reject, a text box will open in which you will enter the reason and tell the buyer what to do so that it can be approved. That's it. Sounds simple. If it were this simple, the training would be about 3 minutes long. Now we'll take a look at the information you need to review, those devilish details. We'll begin with the first tab, General Information. In the procurement method, make sure the buyer has selected the correct method. At the time this video was created, the only methods of procurement you should be using in Hypro is Small Purchase Request for Quote, RFQ, and Competitive Sealed Bids, IFB. Make sure the buyer has not selected Small Purchase and then refer to the solicitation as an invitation for bid, either in the attachments or elsewhere in the solicitation. The procurement method has to be correct and the language has to be consistent, or it will have to be canceled and reissued. Solicitation type. This should either be goods and services or construction. We're not using Hypro for any other procurement type at this time. Solicitation title. The solicitation title should be descriptive of what's being purchased. The solicitation title is different from the line item title, which we'll see on the next tab. For instance, if the solicitation is for buying a truck and an SUV, the solicitation title might be vehicles, and the line item titles may be truck and SUV, respectively. If the solicitation is only for trucks, then both the solicitation and the line item title might be truck. Likewise for the solicitation description. Following the previous example, you might see 2 trucks and an SUV. The detailed description or specifications should be on the line item tab. Next, you will see the significant dates. The release date and offer due date are first. The release date changes if the approver does not approve by the day the buyer has scheduled it for release. The other dates do not automatically change. Buyers may need to extend the offer due date in time. As an approver, you want to make sure there is sufficient time between the release and due date before you approve it. For competitive sealed bids, IFBs, the minimum time is 10 days between the date published and the offer due date, so a minimum of 12 days. The average time buyers leave solicitations open on Hypro is usually 3 to 4 weeks. Statute and rules do not address times for small purchase requests for quotes. The average time a small purchase request for quote is on Hypro is usually 2 to 3 weeks. Next is pre-offer conference. If a pre-offer conference is being held, check the dates and the information. The date is here. The additional information, like the location and any comments, are further down in the pre-offer conference section. If the date for the pre-offer conference is near or has passed by the time you are approving this, reject the solicitation so the buyer can reschedule the dates. Show to Hawaii vendors only. This option will only appear when small purchase request for quote is selected as the method of procurement. If yes is selected, the solicitation will only be visible to vendors registered in HIPRO with a Hawaii address. The solicitation will not appear on the public website, as there's no way to know if someone is a Hawaii vendor until they have logged in. It would be confusing and misleading to have a solicitation on the public website and then have a non-Hawaii vendor log in and not be able to find it. This choice of showing to Hawaii vendors only is only available for the small purchase request for quote method of procurement. Next is allow for submission of questions, or the Q&A section. We always recommend this option be utilized. Check the question and answer due dates and times. Note that a due time of 12 a.m. is 59 seconds after the beginning of the date listed. So that's 59 seconds after midnight of the day before. Do not allow 12 a.m. as the due date. It will be very confusing to vendors. If a pre-offer conference is held, it makes sense to have the questions due after the conference date. Contract start and end dates. If this is a contract that will occur over time, the estimated date of the contract start should be entered in the contract start date. Of course, it must be after the award. Delivery end of contract. If this contract occurs over time, the end of the contract will be here. If this is a one-time delivery contract, for instance for an automotive part, the delivery date should be here. The contract start date should be blank. Allowing vendors to submit by line item. Let's say this solicitation had 3 line items. If the answer to this question is yes, then a vendor will be able to submit an offer for 1, 2, or all line items. If the answer to this question is no, the vendor will have to enter a price for all line items before it will let the vendor submit an offer. Note that this will happen when the line items are listed as separate line items in the HIPRO system, not in any attachments. HIPRO is not smart enough to read your attachments. Procurement officer for the solicitation. Ensure the correct procurement officer is entered. The procurement officer may be different for each solicitation depending on how the department chooses to assign procurement officers. The procurement officer is not the administrator of SPO. Reject the solicitation if the administrator of the SPO is listed as the procurement officer. The pre-offer conference section is next. Examples of buyer comments placed in the pre-offer comments are where to park, if an ID has to be presented at the door, etc. The next section contains the buyer information and also the specifications contact information. A word of caution about having someone other than the buyer as a specifications contact if, in fact, they are knowledgeable of the subject matter but not knowledgeable of procurement. Buyers have had to cancel several procurements because of the comments or actions made by specifications contacts to vendors, simply because the contacts were not familiar with procurement requirements. We recommend that the buyer serve as a specifications contact and that you utilize the Q&A section. The buyer can then pass the questions to the subject matter expert and review their answers before entering them in the Q&A section. Attachments are next. Any attachments that apply to all line items should be here. Buyers may also upload the 103D general conditions here. Check the attachments by opening them to ensure they are the correct ones. Although the system is not designed for it, Note that when there is only one line item, the buyer may place their specification attachments here. If there is only one line item, it then does apply to all line items. When you're done reviewing this page, scroll up and select the next tab to continue. Line Items tab. Each solicitation must have at least one line item. Check the commodity code and ensure it is correct. More than one commodity code may be selected when they are similar. To view the details of the line item, select the line item number. Quantity. At a minimum, an estimated quantity must be entered. If it is estimated, the fact that it is an estimate and is not guaranteed must be stated in the specifications. Entering a guaranteed minimum in your specifications, that is, a minimum in which you guarantee will be purchased, may lead to better pricing. Unit of measure. Make sure the unit of measure makes sense for the goods or services being purchased. Most of the time it will be one of the following. Each, if you're purchasing goods, that is stuff. A job, if you're purchasing a one-time service. If it's a recurring service, it may be a unit of time, such as a year, a month, or an hour. You want to use industry standards whenever possible. Vendors are busy too and may not read it correctly if something unusual is entered. You don't want to have to resolicit. The estimated price per unit remains hidden from vendors and the public unless the buyer selects the option to make it public. Title and description. This is the line item title and description. If specifications are short enough, they can be placed in the description field. If specifications will be in an attachment, a short description of the goods and services and a reference to the attachment should be here in the description field. Attachments. Make sure attachments are there. Open them by clicking on them. Check to ensure they do not contain information that conflicts with other information in the solicitation. A common mistake is to have different dates in the attachment. When you're done, select the next tab. This is the Instructions tab. Make sure that the instructions make sense and don't conflict. Most of the instructions are standard and are mandatory. That is, they can't be deleted. There are optional standard instructions that buyers may choose to include. Buyers may also create instruction. If your buyer creates an instruction, ensure the following. 1. That it belongs in instructions and is not really something that should be in specifications or general provisions. 2. That it makes sense. And 3. There are no typos. The next tab is the Vendor Notification tab. This function is used when the buyer knows a vendor is in Hypro, but that vendor has not selected that commodity code to include in their commodity code profile. The buyer can add the vendor so the vendor is sent the email notification. As an approver, you want to ensure the buyer is not being preferential in who they notify. That is, they notify one vendor and not another because that's the vendor they want. You may review the remaining tabs as needed. Note that the Protest tab is in development for future use and will be used for recording protests that are received. Protests are not filed through Hypro at this time. When approving a solicitation, there will be nothing in the Q&A tab or the Offers tab. The History tab will contain a history of the solicitation. When you are reviewing the solicitation, you can flip back and forth among the tabs. The Approve and Reject buttons are at the bottom of each page. They're there for your convenience and approve the whole solicitation. When you're ready, select Approve or Reject. If you're rejecting, you must enter a reason. The procedure for approving an addendum to a solicitation, an award or contract amendment is similar. Let's look at approving an addendum. When approving an addendum, there are some things that you want to check. Make sure the reason makes sense. It's about the fifth item down, amendment reason. It must contain a summary of the change or the changes. Ensure the buyer has made the change in the solicitation as well. For instance, if the offer due date is changed, scroll down to the offer due date field in HiPro and verify it's also changed correctly. If any of the specifications are changed or deleted, make sure it's addressed in the solicitation where the specifications are located, such as an attachment, and not just in the reason for the addendum. It can be confusing if it's not and could cause a protest. If any dates are revised, check how they may affect other dates. For instance, if the buyer has changed the due date for answers to questions, is there sufficient time between the date the answers will be released and the date offers are due so that vendors have enough time to review the answers and consider them in developing their pricing? After your review, select Approve or Reject. Now we'll look at approving awards. The mechanics are similar. In your review, there are several items you will want to check. These are some things to check in the award itself. The first is contract date. Make sure they are not in the past, that is, prior to the award date. If it is, reject it and tell the buyer to adjust accordingly. If you allow it to pass, it will be a red flag should you be audited, not to mention being very confusing to the awarded vendor. If the quantity has been adjusted, ensure justification is included in the competition comments, the general comments, and internal comments. Scroll down to the line items section. Select the line item number. If attachments have been added, select each attachment and make sure it is correct. Buyers can attach the contract that needs to be signed. The line item details can also be printed. Select the Instructions tab. Check the instructions. Do they make sense? Do they conflict with anything else in the award or solicitation? If the buyer has not emailed you a copy of the abstract summary, you should review the offers. There are two ways to do that. A quick way is to look at the abstract summary PDF file generated by HiPro. Scroll to the bottom of the page and select the Abstract Summary button. A second way is to look at the offers in HiPro. To do that, go to the Award Abstract tab. Select the solicitation number. It is a link to the solicitation. Once at the solicitation, select the Offers tab. You will see a listing of all vendors who made an offer and their total prices for all line items and the total units. If you want to look at prices by line item or price per unit, you can do that by scrolling down to the line item table. Select the line item number. You will see a description of the line item followed by the unit price and total price for each vendor who submitted an offer. When you are done and ready to go back to the award, scroll back up to the listing of all the offers. Under the award column, select View. It is a link to the award. You are now back at the award. When you are ready, scroll down and select Approve or Reject. If you are rejecting, you must enter a reason so the buyer knows what to do. Congratulations! You have now completed SPO 305, High Pro Approver Training. You may review it at any time.